Righty, good afternoon. My name is Katie Combs. I'm the adult programming librarian for the Fort Worth Public Library, and we are here for the first week of the Money Smart series brought to you by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, in which we have brought to you as Money Mondays. So today we are talking about budgeting basics and just kind of the background of money and how we start to have these views about money and how those translate into our spending. We'll go through a couple of different budgets. We'll do a weekly budget, a monthly budget, a bi-weekly budget, just so you can get a feel of how to start budgeting your finances. So I will go ahead and we will go ahead and get started. If you will see the chat box there on your right. You will also have a Q&A box. So I will be asking some questions. If you want to post the question, your answers in the chat, that would be totally great. You can also post them in the Q&A box and leave them anonymous if you have questions that you would like me to answer later on in the presentation. And I hope you all are super excited to get started and to learn a little bit more about budgeting basics. Go ahead and that. Okay, so our opening activity we're going to list some words and phrases, sayings, songs, or other associations that you may have with the word money. So this could be security, root of all evil. Let's see, you could do freedom, anything like that. So just kind of take a second and think about, where your background is with money. Maybe when you think about money, you think of anxiety or think about just anything. So, I will go ahead and share mine. So when I think of money, I think of security. I really do value having a really good backup plan and making sure that I'm prepared for the future. So we have someone in the chat saying security and worries. So yeah, so that would be a big one as well. So worrying. So these kind of, phrases that you're thinking of, what they do is impact the value that you have with money. So a lot of people have, certain money, they tend to trend towards a certain way. You've heard that you have your savers and your spenders, but then there are also people that really highly value security, that, maybe a saver to an extreme or a spender to an extreme. So usually people that tend to value security tend to kind of go towards that saving mindset, making sure that they have a secure place to fall back on. So yes, so we have another one in the chat saying safety net, security. That's really great. And so a lot of things, and we may talk about this later in the series, but a lot of things too is, when you partner with somebody, you share your finances with somebody else. There's a lot of people, they always say that opposites attract. So you may have a spender and a saver. So, just kind of learning about these background that you have of money is really, really important to kind of learn about yourself, especially if you're looking in the future to share those values with somebody else. And it's really also important when you do decide to join your life with someone to know their background and their values as well. So these are good thing to keep in your toolkit and make sure that you know exactly, where your background is. So that's awesome. So this is kind of the same thing. So where do those associations for money come from? This is something that you could be journaling on your own. You can make notes about in your toolkit. So, this does dive in a little bit into your background. How did your parents handle money? What have you seen in your background that makes your money values what they are today? So how do these associations reflect attitudes and feelings about money? So if you wanted to keep, if you have a piece of paper next to you, just jot some thoughts down. Feel free to put it in chat if you would like to share. And our last question is, how are attitudes and feelings related to behaviors and actions? So that's what we talked about a little bit earlier. You have these feelings, you have these, I value security, I value safety, so I'm more of a saver. So if you value, say, if you think of money and you think of freedom, fun, maybe, so you have those that are saying, I worked really hard for this money and I would like to enjoy it. So you have a little bit of a spender. Maybe you value tangible goods, that kind of things. So these are really good things that kind of pinpoint where you are in your money journey and figure out what those values are, how do those values connect to an action? And that way you can kind of pinpoint, maybe you are struggling with maybe saving too much and not being able to go out and spend the money the way you would like, or you are spending too much and you're finding it hard to keep paying your bills. So these are really really, really, really important attitudes that you are going to have and know about yourself in order to have a successful personal finance future. So that's a little bit about the background. Feel free to have those questions written down just to know a little bit about yourself before we get started. Again, you can keep those to yourself or private, or you can share, up to you. So we're going to talk a little bit about financial empowerment. So what is financial empowerment? If y'all want to take a guess in the chat, let me know. If not, we'll talk about it a little bit later. So financial empowerment is kind of that same kind of financial literacy. So everyone thinks, financial empowerment is the same thing as, kind of financial literacy. I know a little bit about, maybe you know a little bit about finance, maybe you don't. Maybe you are completely a beginner and have no idea, or you're, a personal finance guru, totally up to you. So financial empowerment is basically having that in financial literacy and the skill and confidence to use that knowledge. So financial literacy, I know what a checking account is, a savings account is, a retirement account, and these are some things I know that I need to do. So being able to have that and kind of taking those skills and confidence and then being able to confidently use that knowledge that you have. And that's kind of financial empowerment. So making sure that you are empowered to make your own decisions, making sure that you are empowered to maybe know what to tell people is really important later in life. If you make sure to tell your friends and family or whoever you are, maybe putting together a will, to know it's exactly the decisions that I choose to make. So that is a really important one, making sure, and that's exactly what we're doing for you that are maybe viewing this webinar series or sharing it with others, is making sure that you are empowered to make your own decisions in personal finance, because it is very personal. So our next activity is we are going to create some SMART goals. So I know some people may have heard SMART goals before. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So these are goals that you may say, I want to buy, I want to buy a new TV, right? So I want to buy a new TV, and that's a goal. So we're really kind of using this and taking it and making our goals SMART. So we want specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. So in your packet, if y'all have had your packet, you'll see our SMART goal worksheet is the first one. So this one, the packet, it really does talk about, and I believe it has on our next slide. Yes, so it really does talk about, like we said, I would like to buy a new television. So that is a hope and dream, a very loose goal. You then want to turn that goal into a strong goal, a SMART goal. So I will save $400 and purchase a new television in the next 6 months. So that's how you know exactly how you are going to create that goal and achieve that goal. So a little bigger one, I want to get out of credit card debt. That's a really big thing. We have a session about debt later in the series, which will go a little bit further into that. But this is just a broad goal. I want to get out of credit card debt. So our strong goal is I will pay down $1,000 of my debt over the next 18 months. And you can take this goal and you can actually break it down a little bit further. So maybe you can take $1,000, divide it by 18 months, and you have that monthly goal that you're going to reach. So you take a bigger goal and maybe you narrow it down a little bit. So, I would like to pay $50 a month for the next 18 months, anything like that. So making sure how these goals are really, really good and it's really attainable. So in our toolkit, you'll see our setting SMART goals based on your values motivate you to achieve them. So the toolkit, and you will find this toolkit on the library website if you would like to get a copy. I can also email anybody a copy if you let me know. So these values, they want you to walk you through your values. So you talk about what values are important to you. So you have your family and your friends, your reputation, your freedom, your self-respect, and then you would basically, you have an option where you can put down things I would like to change about your background with money, and then dreams you have for yourself or your family. So then it really does walk you through exactly how to create a SMART goal. So if you want to check out that toolkit, it'll be online, or you can email me and I will get you a copy. And so we're just going to go a little bit further into SMART goals. So, it really does start with identify the values that guide you, brainstorm a list of hopes and dreams, and then transform hopes and dreams into SMART goals. So this is really, really great. And I chose to put this at the very beginning of the series so that anyone who wanted to take this series in its 5 parts can make sure to have those goals as a good underlying strength foundation for this series. So it's really important if you're looking into getting into personal finance to have those. A lot of people in the world, any kind of big goals. So personal finance, I think weight loss, it's asks you, what is your why? So what would you like to accomplish? Why are you wanting to better yourself? So those are these really good SMART goals to keep going back to. And then you can kind of say, yes, check mark. I've completed this goal. I'm ready for a next goal. So those are really great to have a really great foundation in order to keep going in your journey. So this is our putting goals into action. So this is past our values worksheet. This was our second worksheet of our packet today. And that is you pick a SMART goal that you would like to achieve. You're going to break it up into steps, and then you'll write down the resources that you need to achieve it and the due date. So the due date's really important. So making sure that you have that solid, I would like to keep this time bound. Make sure you have your time bound, your T. So I would like to have this complete in 12 months or 6 months or 3 months. So it's really important. That way you can readjust as needed. You don't have to say, I would like to complete this in 6 months and it's a firm 6 months, but making sure that you're aware of your 6 months and say, okay, I need to kind of move this around, or I need to put in more money, or I need to do these specific things in order to adjust and meet this goal on time. So you would basically create your SMART goal, and then you would write a specific steps in each box into achieving your goal. You would then, in the next one, talk about the resources that you would need, the date you would like to complete the step, and then who would you like to check in with? So make sure you have a good support system. Maybe that is your partner or your sisters or your roommates or your friends, anybody that you can share this goal with and make sure that someone is holding you accountable, because you want to make sure that you don't, just get lax and decide to just move on. You want to make sure to have that accountability. So feel free to let me know, what goals you have. That way I can keep you on track and keep you making sure that you are moving forward throughout the series. All right, so we will move on from goals into paying bills and tracking your spending. So a lot of people, when they make a budget, I'm sure we've all been guilty of this. You make a budget, it's brand new and shiny and just a great resource to have. And then it sits in your calendar or a notebook and it sits there for 30 days. And then you have no way of knowing whether that budget actually worked or not. And the biggest thing about that is that people do not track their spending accurately or at all. That is a really important, and it's a really big pain. But we're going to talk about some tools that you can use at the end that are digital. You can do it by workbook. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So we'll talk about those later on. But right now we're just going to gently touch on setting your spending goals and talking about paying your bills. So very basic, very basics. So we'll talk a little bit about spending. So spending is the money that you use to pay for your basic needs, your financial obligations, and the things that you may want. So a lot of people talk about, is this a want or a need? So needs maybe are shelter. You may have food, shelter, transportation might be one of them, things that you need to survive in your life. Those are high important things. So you have those at your top. You then have your financial obligations. Financial obligations are money that you owe. So car payment, child support, credit card payments, minimum payments. So these are, they're a need, they're a high need, but they are under your basic needs, your food, shelter, food. Exactly. So then you have your financial obligations, and then underneath that, you have your wants. So this is Netflix, maybe a little bit of personal spending money, Starbucks runs, which I'm guilty of, and I'm sure most everybody else is. So you have your just any kind of wants. Everyone has their wants, and they're still able to fit in your budget for sure. But you want to make sure you have your needs first, your financial obligations second, and your wants last. So you'll see on the screen here, we have our needs, our wants, and our obligations. So we'll walk those through in the budget as well. So we then want to talk about a spending tracker. So this is a nice little tool. It's in your toolkit, but there's also a couple of different ways, and I'll go over those in a second, of how you can track your spending. So here is one that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau recommends, which is an envelope system. So you get an envelope. Every time you spend money, you get a receipt and you put it in a case or envelope. At the end of the month, you go through your receipts and enter the total that you spent for each category in each week. And so then you can kind of notice trends. The first time I did a budget, I realized that I was spending way too much on food because I just went to the grocery store and I went to the grocery store hungry and I just bought whatever looked good. So that kind of showed me, hey, food is a need for sure, but toaster strudels are a want. So that's the things you kind of have to dial back in on. So this is a really good place to start. I don't recommend people making a budget until they have analyzed their spending. Now, if you want to go ahead and start your budget this month and you're really motivated, print off 2 or 3 months of credit card or debit card transactions and go through and chart your spending and figure out where you're at. This is really important for someone with starting a first-time budget because they want to make sure that their budget is accurate. They want to make sure that you are not putting, I will spend $150 on food when they don't know, or they may know that they spend more close to $400 a month. It really depends on what you're spending now, and you can definitely come back and make cuts and pull back from that. But you want to make sure that the first budget you make is very realistic. That way you're not setting yourself up for failure. So this is a really great tool to use. It's a spending tracker. You can also use any kind of budgeting apps. We'll talk about the end if you're a technology person. You can also just make a journal and write it down. Every time you spend money, you write it down. But you want to make sure that you're keeping up to date with your spending. We'll go through with a bill calendar. So a bill calendar is very useful for a couple different ways. So, this is to make sure that you're paying your bills on time, and you're also making sure that you are knowing where your paychecks falls with your bills. So if you get paid bi-weekly, which a lot of people get paid bi-weekly, you'll want to we'll go ahead and put down the bills that you make or bills that you owe, and then your paychecks. So when you get paid, you see what bills do I have to pay in the next 2 weeks. So that may be, say you get paid on the 5th. So any bills you have between the 5th and maybe next time you get paid, maybe the 20th. So everything you pay from the 5th to the 20th, you need to pay with a paycheck on the 5th. It's very important. That's making sure that your next 2 weeks are covered, your needs are covered, and then you can go down to your financial obligations and your wants. So, and this is really also important to make sure that if you do get paid bi-weekly, you may need the income for, say, the month of October to cover in the 1st of November until you get paid again. That happens a lot. If you're not on a monthly paycheck cycle, you may need to carry over that income. So this is to make sure that you are keeping up to date on your bills. Now, a lot of people recommend that you are a month ahead. So a lot of personal finance leaders talk about really important to have a month ahead. So making sure that, when you get paid in October, you're paying December's bills, or so on and so forth. So that is a goal to achieve, but you want to make sure to get your basic needs, financial obligations, and wants covered first. And then we'll, work on a month ahead. So this is very important. You'll want to write down the name of the company, how much you owe, and what the date you need to pay on the calendar. Keep it somewhere that you can see it. That way you are highly aware of what is coming in and out of your checking account. Now, it's also a really great idea if you do share finances with somebody, like a partner, a husband, wife, anything like that, that you make sure that you are both on the same page. So that way, someone doesn't go out and spend the phone bill before it comes out. This is a very good tool to keep right in front of you on the fridge that you can reference back to. So that is a little bit about spending trackers and your bill calendar. We're going to touch a little bit about cash flow budgeting. So cash flow budgeting is when you are really short on cash, and this is broken into a weekly format. I haven't seen a lot of people that budget weekly. I don't think that people getting paid weekly is a higher thing than maybe getting paid monthly or biweekly, but it was in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's toolkit, so we want to make sure to touch on that as well. So a cash flow budget is basically only working with the cash that you have on hand. So a lot of people handle this if they only deal in cash, they don't like to use a checking account, or they're dependent on other sets of income that may come in at different points of the month, like SNAP or food stamps, something like that. And so the benefit of this approach is making sure that you are highly aware of what cash you have on hand, because you cannot spend what you don't have. So, and we'll go through a little bit of an example here. Here is a cash flow budget that's been included in your toolkit. So basically what you'll start right here, week 1, in your starting balance. Then you'll add in the money that you receive each week. So say I get paid $300 from one source of income and $100 from the other. So I have in my starting balance. So then I have $650. I then subtract my weekly expenses. So, and if you get paid weekly, this is a really great idea to break up your bills weekly. So say, I get paid weekly. There's no way one paycheck at the end of the month on my weekly paycheck will pay for my whole entire mortgage. So I need to make sure to break that up into weekly increments. So say, I have, a $600 mortgage. So I want to make sure to budget aside a little bit every week in order to have that $600 by the end of the month. So this person right here has $200 they needed to set aside, $35 maybe for food, and $15 for etc. So you have $400 left at the end of the week. You will then carry that $400 over here, and then you'll do it all over again. Put in your weekly paycheck, your total income, subtract your weekly expenses, and carry it over to the next month. So this is really great for those who are budgeting weekly. Really great tool to have, especially if you have, alternate sources of income coming in. So this is a cash flow scenario. So you see this person, they had $257. They had income from a part-time job and SNAP. So this is their weekly start. They had, $845 paid to housing. So right off the bat, they're pretty low. They then put $200 towards groceries, $225 for eating out, $60 for fuel, $70 for childcare, and $50 for miscellaneous. So this is how much they spent in 1 week, which put them in the red right here. So this is what you need to look at, especially when you're putting a cash flow budget together, is to making sure that your weekly expenses are going to be are divided enough that you can cover them for each paycheck. You don't want to be in the red because you're spending money that you don't have. This is a lot of times where people rely on credit card debt or something similar in order to keep your boat floating, pretty much. So you want to make sure, like I said here, she paid all of her housing at once. This is what I was recommending earlier, to split that housing into 4 separate increments. That way that, you're not hitting that $845 and using all that money at once. So you can see here, she started week 2 with a negative balance. She had an income come in from her job, her part-time job, which gave her a little bit more money. But when she paid her student loan payment, her television service, her household supplies, groceries, eating out, looks like she had her auto insurance come out, she was only left at $65. So she carried that $65 over, got some more income, but then along with all of her bills, ended with a negative again. So cash flow budget is really important to making sure that you're not spending more than you make on this. And you want to make sure that your bills and your expenses are timed appropriately to making sure that they're spread out evenly over the month. So if you get paid weekly, great situation, a great toolkit for you to be able to examine your bills and making sure that they're lined up with your paychecks. Okay. So this speaks a little bit about improving your cash flow. So, they always talk about, well, I don't have a budgeting problem. Well, I don't have a finance problem. I have an income problem. I don't make enough to cover my expenses. And I just don't feel like it's worth it for me to go ahead and start, budgeting now. So these are a couple of ways to improve your cash flow. So you can increase your source of cash or your source of income. So you can apply for public benefits, tax credits, maybe get a second job, side hustle, anything like that to kind of improve that kind of cash flow coming in. Now you can decrease your spending uses of cash and other financial resources. Maybe go back to here. She can maybe look at her television service, maybe go on Netflix instead of paying for cable. You can look at your phone bill. You can look at your internet. All these things are variable. All these things that you can kind of negotiate on. Auto insurance, big one, making sure to check those kind of variable expenses and see what you can cut back on. Groceries, huge one, meal planning. So you have variable expenses here that you can change for sure, that are maybe different from, maybe your housing or your debt payments. Those are kind of fixed unless you decide to make a lifestyle change, maybe cut back on the rent payment, get a roommate, move to a lower area, that kind of thing. So these are ones you want to make sure to take a look at and see what you can cut back on. You can also, what we talked about earlier, match timing of sources and uses of income where possible. So this is really important, what I was talking about earlier, dividing your expenses to match when your income is coming in. Very important. Now, again, we would love to see you be a month ahead, but if you're not a month ahead and you're just kind of timing your sources and use of income, that is fine. Just making sure that you're kind of building a safety net, a savings account, that way that say you get laid off or kind of cut back your hours, you're not dependent on that next paycheck to come. That way you're not living paycheck to paycheck. It's very important. All righty. So here is a worksheet in your toolkit that talks about improving cash flow. So I will negotiate a new due date for my bills to see when they're due, making sure they move to when I receive income. I've seen it. A lot of people are very, very, very flexible on these. Maybe your rent is not, or your mortgage, they usually do on the first, but a lot of other ones, call them, tell them, hey, can I move my due date? And usually they're great with that. So make sure to call and make sure to figure out how you can time your expenses up to your income. You will negotiate splitting a large monthly payment into two smaller ones. This is really great for mortgages or rent, making sure to say, hey, I will pay you half on the 15th and half on the 1st, or you can just stick half in a savings account and give them the other half, and making sure to have that ready to go. Third one, I will change large lump sum payments into smaller monthly payments on things like car insurance. Yes, so say your car insurance is due every 6 months, see if you can pay monthly. I would love to see you get the discount frame every 6 months, but if you're using credit card debt or knocking down your savings account to pay for it, maybe try monthly for now until we can get to the point where you can pay that in full. So these are strategies for improving your cash flow and making sure that you are not having an income problem. Okay, so we will now talk about understanding a monthly budget. So if you are budgeting monthly, which some do, some get paid bi-weekly and choose to pay monthly, that's totally great. A lot of people, maybe they get paid monthly. So I'm going to go ahead and go right into Excel. And I do have this file that can be sent if needed, if you would like to, but I'm going to switch into Excel. Now, this is a monthly budget. So you have your income here, your expenses here, you're in your debt here. So note in your savings. So notice here that I've put your variable expenses and your fixed expenses in the same area. No problem, that's totally fine. So you just kind of want to say, I personally, in my own personal, I group these by due date. So I will put my rent, my water, my internet, my electric. Actually, I think these are actually put on my, they're in the order that I pay them. So, and then I put my variable expenses down here. So this one, Excel is a really great tool. It's free. You don't have to pay for a service for this. So basically you come in and you get paid, say you get paid $1,000, and that'll auto put here. You then put in your expenses, maybe for the next couple months. So say I get paid $1,000, I need to pay my rent. I need to pay my $200 for water, maybe my water bill, my internet, anything like that. So you'll see your total here, right? You'll then put your debt. I have to pay $35 towards my credit card, $100 towards my student loans and all that. So then you have your total expenses. So this is your income right here minus your total expenses. So then you know how much you have left to pay for your savings or maybe throw extra at debt. So this is a really great tool to use. It's a really great tool because Excel lets you keep track of this. So you can keep track of month to month, over the month. So you can then put your budget. Now this is really great. This is your actuals column. So maybe you don't exactly stick to the budget. I don't think anybody really does 100%. You have to kind of change it at will depending how the month goes. So you have your budget, which is your expected spending, and then you have your actual spending. So then you can then kind of keep track of that. Now over here to your left, which is also why Excel is a great tool, you have your spending tracker. So you can put the date. So maybe on 11/1, I went and had, bought food at Taco Bell for $11. And then you can also put your account if you put a different accounts. So then you can kind of keep track of that. And you can also kind of keep track of it that way. That way, at the end of the month or end of a week or end of a paycheck cycle, whenever it's good for you, you can sort that category and enable down all food expenses. So maybe on the second, I spent my internet bill for $20 or whatever. So you can then kind of limit it down. You can sort it by category, add that category up in Excel and put it in your actuals column. So this is a great way to keep track of your spending as it goes along. You can put this in Google Docs. That way you can access it on your phone. And then what you do is when you're finished, you just, copy that, copy this sheet, move and copy onto the next month. And that way you can put the next month on there for the next month and keep track. So that's a really great tool to use. And again, that spreadsheet is able to be emailed if needed. So we will then go back to our PowerPoint. Okay, so we just went through, this is our monthly budget. Okay, so at the very end, we will touch on a little bit about budgeting apps. So a lot of things, this was kind of the rage back in the, when apps first started coming out. This is a really great tool to use. Some people love pen to paper, which is totally great. Some people like Excel, but these are some apps that would be really, really good if you're just now starting your financial journey and we want something a little bit more digital. So we have Every Dollar is by Dave Ramsey's group, which is kind of the same thing what we had talked about earlier. You put in it's a monthly, so you put in your monthly expenses, your monthly income, and it has a kind of virtual envelopes. So you can assign a certain amount of budget, say $300 for food, and then you can track your spending in there and it'll automatically take it out of that envelope. Good Budget is very similar to that. It has virtual envelopes that you can kind of take track from. These are things that you can see on the go. Really important, you walk into Target, you open up your phone and you see how much you have left in a certain category. That way you know that you're not spending outside of your means. Mint is a very popular one because it's automated. So you can hook up your banking accounts to Mint and they will walk you through and keep track of your spending for you. So you don't have to input them manually. You can hook up your account. That way you can just kind of set and it'll give you updates of your spending and how much you have left to spend in each category as well, but you don't have to input your spending yourself. Now, I do recommend that one, but not if you're on your first kind of trip going through budgeting. It's really important to kind of, it really is helping to track your spending yourself and kind of seeing where you're at. Mint is great because you can set it and forget it, but you have to make sure to go back and recheck where you are with your goals, making sure you're hitting those goals. Down here we have YNAB. So YNAB is what you need a budget. And that one is a really great, it's an app and it's also a personal web page. So you can access it either way. Does the same thing as a lot of other places. It talks about your envelopes. You can enter in your income and get the envelopes, but you can also track your net worth, has credit card debt or debt spending trackers. Really great one to track all of your personal accounts at once. And again, down here we have personal capital, which is less of a budgeting and more of a tracking. So if you're interested in tracking your retirement, tracking your net worth and seeing how it's going, that's a really great tool for that as well. So those are some apps that you can use and kind of reference back for if you're looking for something a little bit more technological. Or you can use Excel, or you can do it by pen and paper. Totally up to you. And one over here, I missed this one. This is also if you have an online banking, you can check with them. A lot of them have budgeting apps as well inside their system that automatically tracks your spending. And all you have to do is categorize it. So check with that and check with your online banking app to see whether they have some personal spending app transactions as well. So this is all we have for our first week of Money Monday. We're going to keep this series pretty short. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Having the app Mint and Credit Karma has really helped with some of your debt and beginning budgeting. That's super great. Credit Karma is really great. We'll talk about that one in the making sure to check your credit series. So Credit Karma is really great with that, making sure to keep all of your debts and liabilities and everything in a row. And Mint is really great as well. So feel free to post any questions at all, any comments in the chat or the Q&A box. Would love to have any questions from you guys. Next week, we will be talking about credit scores and how to make sure your credit score is really good in order to be able to get maybe a new house or a new apartment or qualify for a car loan. Any of those things are really important. So we'll talk about how to find your credit report, making sure that there's no any errors on it, and how to kind of build your credit up.